Hi, this is my review of Screaming Eagles, Band of Brothers from Worthington Games. Let's have a look at the back of the box. It, not surprisingly, is about the 101st from D-Day through to the Bulge. If you haven't seen the TV series, the 101st is one of the American Airborne from World War II. Difficulty is 3 out of 10. Playing time is 30 minutes to 2 hours. I think that's broadly speaking about right. Rulebook, not too many pages of rules, about 14 pages. Overall, pretty well written. Not maybe, if I'm being completely honest and fair, maybe not quite concise enough. There's been a few times where I haven't played the game in a while, come back to the game, found an example, like the other day I was playing a mission and I want to shoot a bazooka at a tank. It took me a little while to work it out. So maybe not quite as, not quite as straightforward as the game actually is. It's a pretty simple game, I'll be honest with you, quite straightforward game. But the rule book is written in such a way, or laid out in such a way, sometimes it's hard to find things or for them to make complete sense the first time. Conversely, scenario book is awesome, and you get tons of scenarios, 18 different scenarios in the game. Each scenario fully detailed, shows you what counters you're going to be using, what map boards. You can work out how long it will take to play a game based on those two things. This is not a huge counter sort of game. I think, roughly speaking, the most counters you're going to be playing with is probably 25 per side. Roughly speaking, there are plenty of missions that just use 1 or 2 of the map boards, and there are some that use 4 or 5 of them for that matter. The missions are great, and I've played them all multiple times, enjoyed them all, both solo and 2-player. And once you have the core mechanics, the core rules down, you'll be, well away. Scenarios are a lot of fun. The scenarios, because it's covering the 101st, are all predominantly based in France and in Holland, which is great. Holland in particular is of great interest to me, so I enjoyed that element as well. The scenarios, because of the sort of game it is, the maps are geomorphic. They're not specifically done to that location, but still there's enough historical flavour in the scenarios for me, which is great. Like I said, tons of scenarios, awesome. Rulebook is good. Could do with another refinement, I'll be honest with you. But there are plenty of other YouTube videos to show you how to play the game, which is good. You get a couple of player aids, again, very good. One showing all the different cover, terrain, and then the core sort of combat mechanics. I would have liked a player aid that showed a breakdown of the turn, as there are multiple phases in the turn. It's not a biggie, it's just a little pet thing, but again, I'm pretty sure on Board Game Geek someone's done one. So yeah, good stuff. Maps are great. Nice thick cardstock, they're geomorphic. This is a 4-map setup here. I've got Plexi over it. No reason why, I just like playing on Plexi. The maps sit down nice and flat. I've had this game since its launch. This is a remastered edition, so it's sort of 2nd edition. So I've had it a while, played it a ton. The maps and all the counters have held up really well. The artwork is great, it's very readable, very clear what the contents of the hexes are. The counter art is also great. You do get a very handy tray for all the counters to go into, which is great. You get, as well as all the different infantry counters. So there we've got some infantry counters for the American Airborne and the Germans. Same. There's a couple of examples. There are also a stack of tanks and armour, self-propelled guns, tank destroyers, artillery guns, anti-tank guns, and so forth, which is great. The artwork's really nice. The counters are very, very readable. They're nice and chunky. I clicked mine. They've held up really well. You get a stack of these sort of used counters, not surprisingly, in the game. When you've used a counter, you put one of those on. Works really well. These you're going to be using a lot, the suppression counters. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So each counter, as I said, has all the information that you need. There aren't really any charts or anything too much like that. You're going to use the terrain chart on the player aid for sure, but it's basically got a series of numbers. It tells you basically the dice roll you need to hit on a D10. So this counter needs a 6 to hit normally. If they're using opportunity fire, they need a 5. They've got a range of 5. Shows you their casualties. So if they get hit, they can either be reduced or completely eliminated, and then shows the morale 10, 6, and 2. 10 is their morale normal. You have to roll a dice to activate them, but as their morale is 10, it's 10-sided dice, you don't need to roll it. It's only when they take suppression that you would need to roll, and if they take full suppression. It's a very simple set of mechanics. Basically, if this counter is firing on this counter, you roll a d10, you need a 6. If you get a 1, for example, and low numbers are good in this game, the difference between the 6 and the 1 is 5. Their casualty rating is 3/7. Because the 5 is more than the 3, then they would be reduced. It's not quite as much as 7. If it was 7, they would be eliminated. Really simple, really straightforward. Yeah, flows really, really well. So other mechanics that's worth touching about. When it's your turn, you can't activate all of the counters. You activate a number of them. They're all worth 1, except for tanks and artillery pieces. They're worth 3. The reality is you activate maybe 3 or 4 counters, then the other player will activate 3 or 4. Then it'll come back to you to activate 3 or 4 more, etc. That number depends on the scenario, right? It's very asymmetrical. So often I've found, generally speaking, the Allied player can activate more counters when it's their turn to do so than the Germans. When you activate a counter, you put the little used counter on it, so you know you can't activate it again in that turn. It's very elegant, really straightforward, really simple. If you're teaching this game to anyone or learning it for yourself, it's just really straightforward. And that is true of the game, to be fair. There aren't many times where I've stumbled over the rules, and when I have, it's maybe because I didn't quite understand the rule or it wasn't quite written in the way that I would have liked it to have been done. But it's only the edge case scenarios. For the most part, it's a very, very, very straightforward game. Other things I like about the game, components are great, absolutely stunning. I love these scenarios. I really like these sort of squad-based tactical games set in Europe. Particularly enjoy that as well as I do the Eastern Front for sure. So that's really cool. It's really great. This I've played it solo. There's no solitaire bot. There's no solitaire AI. You're playing both sides to the best of their abilities. I've also played it with my kids, for example, and they enjoyed it as well. So it's definitely a good game that you could play with a younger gamer or someone who's not so used to war games. All the mechanics are they're just straightforward. The nuance of this game, I'll talk about that for a second, and there are a couple. One, this is a game about firing, flanking, and finishing. The flanking part is an optional rule. What you want to be doing is firing on an enemy counter, suppressing it, then fully suppressing it, and then finishing it with another counter in close combat. Broadly, that's how you play the game. It's very unlikely that you'll be destroying an enemy counter simply by firing upon it. The reason that's so important is that when the counter takes suppression and the other player wants to activate that counter, maybe you've got a counter moving towards it, they have to check their morale, and if it's suppressed, it's more than likely that they'll pass their morale. If they don't pass their morale, they can't start returning fire. So you want to fully suppress the enemy, and then finish them. And it works really simple. It's not the only game that does that, in fairness, but it does it in quite an elegant, quite sort of straightforward manner, and it's that I really enjoy with the game. This is a very decisive game. close combat is very brutal. The other thing that's interesting that they do in the rules is that the morale check and close combat, you do morale check before you do close combat. So if you have this counter in that example, let's say I've got a couple of infantry counters there, they have fully suppressed this counter here, and I try and finish them with this counter, because it's in contact with me, will have to do a morale check. These guys will pass automatically because they're on a 10. They won't, they got to make a roll of a 1 on the d10 very hard. So if they fail, they're just basically destroyed. So close combat, very, very straightforward, very effective. So super streamlined mechanics, which is great. Easy to teach, fairly easy to learn, great components, a wonderful setting with the 101st. If you're familiar with the TV series, that will be in your mind, honestly, most of the time that you play this game, which is great. I would have liked the game to have covered the 82nd as well, but hey ho. Yeah, so great fun, great components. Surprised this doesn't get more coverage when people talk about squad-based tactical games. I've pretty much got every single squad-based tactical game there is. I love them all. I'm not going to compare it to other games. I would say, if someone said to me, should I get this? I would say, if you like the 101st, you watch the TV series or you read the books, and you like the Western Front as a scenario, as a setting, and you want something a bit lighter, you can play in an evening comfortably, maybe something you want to play with friends who aren't mega into war games or new to war games, etc. This is a great option. I don't think it's the only option, but I think this is a great option. And I've had a lot of fun with it and enjoyed it immensely. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.